Hi, this is Thomas Blood. I'm an enterprise strategist with Amazon Web Services, and I would like to welcome you to our virtual transformation day. So in this presentation, I will lead you through some thoughts and lessons learned along the way of leading an organization in a cloud transformation. So I'll cover, what is the underlying problem or concern? How do I get started? How do I get into a foundation phase? And then once I've built something, how do I go faster? And ultimately, our goal is to get to a place where we can reinvent ourselves. And finally, I'll end on next steps. I've been doing IT and related things for more than 30 years. You can see I've done lots of different things. In 2014, 2015, I was working at Experian and led a cloud transformation there where we took one of the business units and brought it into AWS. And I've learned a great deal, things to do and things not to do, and I'll share some of those with you. But I'm also traveling throughout Europe, Middle East, and Africa as an enterprise strategist, where I meet with executives from large enterprise companies in public sector and private sector, and we've learned a great deal from our customers. It's what we do. So let's start with the problem statement here. First, everyone's journey is different. There's a prescriptive path or guidance of what to do, but not necessarily in what sequence. So I just want to make that clear that it's not a cookbook recipe per se. It's more a set of patterns and mindsets and mental models that you can apply. A lot of boards will have a slide that says, let's innovate, let's go to the cloud, let's be cloud first. But they don't really know how to do it. And the reason is clearly explained here. People are afraid of the new, of the change, of the new idea, because it's a little scary. It can be scary. And I'll talk through more about that in a minute. But let's start with leadership. It's important to understand what leadership actually is. And I spent years in the military, spent years in IT organizations, and it's really a false idea to believe that leadership simply means I have a title and I can get people to do because I have the title. It's more about bringing people along on a journey, painting a vision, painting a picture, exciting people, influencing them to do things that maybe they don't really want to do, and I think often it's against great odds. It's also important to distinguish between management and leadership. Often we will pick great managers, people who keep the trains running on time, who keep costs within boundaries, who really know how to dive in and solve problems. But for a transformation project and for a large effort of going into the cloud, what really is needed is leadership. You have to establish direction. You have to get people aligned and motivated. You have to take them along for a potentially long journey with lots of unknowns. This is about change. Management is about order. And so it's really important to pick someone who's a leader to head this effort up versus a manager. It is also very, very important for this leader and for the organization to have clarity of vision. All too often, I will meet with a customer, again, who just has a slide that says, we're cloud first. But it doesn't explain why. Why are you cloud first? Where are you going? What are you trying to accomplish? So it is very, very important to figure out upfront why you want to go into the cloud, why you want to become cloud first or cloud native or whichever flavor you're going for, and being able to explain it and articulate it to the organization in the context of business, in the context of outcomes, in the context of what are you trying to solve. And of course, it has to be achievable. So you have to be able to explain how you're going to accomplish this and how are you going to align the organization to make it happen. Before you embark on the cloud transformation, it is essential to have executive sponsorship. All too often, we talk to customers who, for the right reasons, want to move into the cloud, and the decisions are made in the IT department or in a product department, or maybe someone who's really passionate in the organization, and they start, and they get some traction, but after a while, they kind of run out of steam, and they run out of steam for lots of different reasons. And I'll get into some of those reasons in a short while. Therefore, it's incredibly important to have executive buy-in, executive sponsorship. You need someone who can amplify your message throughout the organization. You need someone who actually signals intent to the organization through policy, through announcements, through town hall meetings, someone who gives you the authority to execute, to do the things that need to be done. And sometimes what needs to be done is you need to break glass. And that's hard to do if you don't have executive sponsorship. You will work with your peers, and many of your peers may have concerns around what's going on. And for them to know that you have executive sponsorship will make the conversation a lot easier. And I'll talk about escalation paths in a little bit. It's also critically important to have a clear business case. Again, why are you doing this? So when I was doing this at Experian, we wrote a business case, and our business case centered entirely on business agility, on time to market. How do we drive our business forward faster in the face of competition? We didn't really dive into cost so much. It was more about enabling the business to solve customer problems faster and getting to market faster. When we, in 2014, 2015, we could get out 2 major projects a year, and so every 6 months, which represented 2 bets per year for the business. Competitors could go faster in some cases. So our goal was to be able to deliver things in 2-week sprints and constantly bring out new things to market. That seems common wisdom today, but surprisingly, this idea of business agility still hasn't completely caught on. So it's very, very, very important to build out this business case. And there are other things to talk about. You can talk about productivity. You can talk about resilience of your systems. How many outages have you had in the past year? And wouldn't it be nice to reduce those outages by having a better platform, a more stable system, or a self-healing system? So when you get started, you will be very quickly confronted with your own culture. When I went through our effort at Experian, we did a 3-month proof of concept, if you will. Really, it was a gated approach, a bet to say we could deliver something customer-facing that would be really inspiring to the organization. And after the first 3 months, we quickly learned that the technology portion of it was actually fairly straightforward. You put smart people in a room, you give them a challenge, and you get out of the way, and they will build amazing things. The harder part was actually the organizational culture. And culture evolves over time. Culture is the history of the organization, the choices that were made in the past, the policies and the belief systems that have emerged over time. And that's really, really embedded at a very subtle and deep level, and it's not always obvious. There are lots of hidden rules and hidden beliefs that are not codified anywhere, and those too have to be taken into account. So when you approach a project like this, do not underestimate the importance of culture. And I'll talk more about how to deal with the cultural transformation here in a bit. At Amazon, we use tenets. So tenets are core beliefs or core patterns that we like to fall back on. When you have tenets, they help you cut through decisions more quickly because you already have defined core things that you believe are important to the organization or to the effort. Let me give you some examples. So one core tenet could be you build it, you run it, right? If you build it, you run it as a core template, as a DevOps tenet, it changes how you think, right? It means that the developers actually now own the software, and if it breaks, they have to fix it. They get the call at 2 in the morning. It changes that particular team's culture. I had one which was basically get out of the way because I trusted that the teams would make really smart decisions on behalf of the organization. Of course, you keep an eye on it, and you might interfere or intervene if necessary, but by and large, it's actually easier to just get out of the way and let the teams do what they need to do. We also always add, unless you have better ones. So when you come up with your tenets, put together a list of your tenets, and we have some samples you can get from our pro server, your account manager. We like to encourage people to think about the tenets. Are these the right tenets? And if not, I'll suggest better ones. When you form your initial team, the very first team you're putting together for a cloud project or a transformation project, it's important to put the right team together. You will pick people that are well known inside the organization. These are the go-to people. If you need someone who is a database expert, you know who that person is. And you will put this team together, and it's important that they are 100% dedicated to the effort. I hear all too often leaders who say, yeah, well, we'll assign so-and-so for 50% to this effort. That will not work, because if you assign someone 50%, it actually means that whatever is in production already and is already driving revenue will always trump the new thing. And either they will work 10% on the effort, or they will work 200% and sleep and not sleep anymore and try to do both. Both of those outcomes are not good for the project and for the person. When you put the team together, you want people who are good at teamwork, good at collaboration, people who are willing and able and have demonstrated in the past that they can learn new things really fast, who really buy into the vision of what you're trying to do. Sometimes you'll get someone assigned from another organization or another team lead, and that person doesn't really buy in. That's not a good person to have on this team. You need complete and total buy-in in what you're doing. This takes passion and it takes belief. And of course, you're going for the people who are results-oriented, people who deliver, people who are not afraid to really, really dive deep and work hard to accomplish what needs to be done. Equally important is having someone who's done it before with you on the journey. You need someone who can map through the terrain, who understands what's going on, who knows where the sea monsters and dragons are hiding and lurking. I went through this process again in 2014, 2015, and we had never done this before. None of us had done anything in the cloud. So I found a small consulting partner who was able to help us along the way. And in particular, they helped us with architecture and with building up our DevOps capabilities, and I'll talk more about DevOps. And importantly, security and compliance, right? Someone who really knows how to establish guardrails and guidelines to protect us from ourselves. We were very ambitious and eager, and we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. And having a partner along who could point us in the right direction, who could help set the path for us was really, really important. I'm going to make a comment on the change management side because, as I said, this is a cultural transformation as much as it is an IT and business and development transformation. It's good to have someone along who understands change management. Change management is not easy. So it might be a good idea to find a partner who can help with the change management piece of this, who can help with your new organizational structure because there are implications on how you are organized when you do these teams that I'll talk about in a minute. Someone who understands how to communicate to the rest of the organization what's going on in an effective manner. This is very important. So if you can bring in a partner who has a change management capability as well, that would be very, very helpful. So you've decided to go, so you got to figure out what's your first workload. And we talk to a lot of customers who maybe do this as a pet project, or they do something that's it's just a lab exercise. That doesn't usually work. What does work is picking something that is customer facing, that has a business value. It should be small enough that you can accomplish it quickly because you want a quick win, but it should be hard enough that it's a challenge and that you're learning something along the way. Again, picking this workload is really important because you want to convince and demonstrate to the larger organization that this A can be done and B is worth doing. In 2015, when I went through this process, security was for us critical. It is critical, and we actually had a policy that basically said we're not going to the cloud. So I took our CISO out to lunch, and I told him, you're kind of in the cloud already. There's lots of shadow IT going on in the organization. People are doing things that are in the cloud, and maybe not sanctioned or not really fully understood. So why don't we partner? Why don't we work on this together? And he agreed. And so we had weekly security reviews and meetings with the security team to make sure that we're doing this the right way. And this is an opportunity, by the way, to instill a security mindset in the entire organization. It's something that security is seen as an afterthought, right? Traditionally, we build something and then we have the security team validate or check or try to break it. It's actually much more effective and funner to work with the security team up front to build security in from the very, very beginning. And part of that is automation, right? This is the now well-known idea of DevSecOps, or as one of my colleagues called it, SecDevSecOpsSec. And you can actually build this into everything. You can test your releases, test your architectures throughout the process, not at the very end, and make sure that you're secure all the way through all the time. You will need help with mapping your security controls against the requirements that your organization has or the regulations that might exist in your industry and your business. So again, having the CISO on board and partnering with him or her is really, really important. We also recommend that you embrace an agile mindset and an agile principles for most workloads. So I'm going to say some workloads don't require agile. You know, if you have something that is a medical device that has life and death implications if it fails, maybe that's not the best thing for an agile iterative approach. But the majority of projects that we see really would benefit from an agile mindset. You know, and so if you read the Agile Manifesto, I have some of the ideas here. It's working software over documentation. Doesn't mean no documentation, it just means enough documentation. Working with the customer, having small iterative cycles and delivery, and working as teams in a very interactive process and way. I really highly recommend you do an all-in agile transformation while you work in the cloud. So DevOps is rocket fuel for your organization. You remove all the repetitive tasks as much as you can. Anytime you have a standard operating procedure, you have a routine process that's done manually, figure out a way how to automate that. You know, all too often we hear leaders say we don't have time. Well, you probably do have time. It's just that you're spending time on manual tasks, and if you automate them, you recover that time, and you can invest that time in other things, such as cloud transformation. And bonus, when you automate these processes, you can build out the guardrails I mentioned earlier and the security guardrails that the CISO is interested in, and you can limit the risk to the organization by having well understood, well-established procedures and processes that are automated. And the other bonus is handoffs are the thing that slow you down probably the most in the organization. You're waiting for someone else and you're passing things around. Get rid of those handoffs. Automate all of those processes. That's where you're going to get speed and time to work on the things that matter for your business. When you go along, it is also very, very important to celebrate success often. Your team will be probably working in an environment where not everyone's on board. There will be people in the organization who secretly hope that you will fail. So it's important to build the morale of the team and also to signal to the organization that this is happening and you're having progress and success along the way. And everyone should know that you're succeeding along the way. So celebrate every time you have a really successful event. Highlight the individual contributors in the team for what they've done to build out the morale of the organization and to help drive this transformation further. Let's talk about building out the foundation a bit. After you've built your first workload and your first project, and you start taking on larger workloads, you're going to need a Cloud Center of Excellence. This is a team, an organization that enables the IT organization to go faster. And we think of it as a combination of two things. There's a cloud engineering component, which is the infrastructure automation, the operations and the security piece, as well as the cloud business office component, which is where you have enterprise architects, where you deal with governance, where you have the organizational change management mandate, You're interacting with finance because finance may be impacted by the new product features that you're developing and also by new ways of managing cost. And you'll have a training and engagement process, to build out the capabilities of the organization as a whole. Again, this is one of those success factors. We see organizations that have a Cloud Center of Excellence typically perform much better in their transformation in the cloud. So this is really a must-have. So we talked about the initial team, and when we talked about the initial team, I mentioned, I think that, or I showed a slide that had various capabilities in the team. This is the two-pizza team idea. And why two-pizza team? Well, it's the size of a team that you can feed with 2 pizzas. So it's maybe 8 people, maybe 10 people. It's small. And the idea behind the two-pizza team is they have all the resources on the team that they need to move quickly. They're not waiting on another team to get things done. You're trying to get rid of those handoffs, right? So a typical two-pizza team would have someone who does infrastructure and DevOps, someone who knows about security and is responsible for security. They'll have application engineers, someone who deals with operations, and an architect. As I mentioned in the beginning, when you go through this process, you will encounter the cultural norms, and sometimes they manifest as resistance. Sometimes they manifest simply as, again, a desire and a fervent hope that you will just go away. But sometimes this fear, uncertainty, and doubt can actually result in people actively opposing what you're trying to do, in some cases even trying to undermine what you're doing. So you have to be very careful about this. But it's important to differentiate because it's really easy to say, this is just fear, and I'm just going to ignore it. You have to look at what's really informing those fears. Is there actually an issue here? Is there something we should be mindful of? Maybe a security concern that's a real security concern versus a hand-wavy one. So you have to pay attention to the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and then analyze and try to understand what is it? Is it real or is it just fear? And then if it's, depending on what you find, you may have to escalate to your executive sponsor to overcome whatever this resistance is. So if it's a concern, let's say it's a security concern, it's perfectly okay to say, we're going to accept the risk. That's one thing you can do. Or if it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the executive sponsor can simply decide that we're going to move forward anyway. However, use this approach sparingly. It's much better to win people over, to educate, to explain, to demonstrate success, to bring people along on this journey versus trying to force them along on the journey. So if you have to, use the executive sponsor, but I recommend you try not to. It will be very important throughout to educate the organization. This is a big deal. These transformations are profound, and they can touch everything in the organization, everything from HR to finance to legal. I mean, everyone can be impacted one way or another. So it's important that everyone understand, why are you doing this, and how does it work, and what are the benefits? And there are mechanisms for educating the organization. And for example, you could sign up for an AWSome Day, and we actually occasionally host AWSome Days in organizations. So ask your account manager about that, so you can actually have a very impactful event right there where you're working for your entire organization. I used to host lunch and learns. I recorded sessions of training sessions and then make them available as a webinar. You can do demos, you can do hackathons. At Experian, I asked the CEO of the business unit to do a weekly video cast for an hour where we talked about the successes and the challenges and just talk publicly and transparently about what's happening and celebrated again the successes and highlighted the success of individual contributors and the team. Have an open door policy. Be available to explain to people when they have concerns or they're just interested or curious. Look for places where you can be inspired and where you can inspire the team. So one obvious thing to do, if you can, is to send team members or the entire team to reInvent in Las Vegas, because it is incredibly powerful to be in a place with 50,000 other attendees, learning from your peers, learning from your colleagues, and seeing what they're doing in AWS. It's extraordinary. So I highly recommend you do it, reInvent if you can. If not, and in addition, go to your local summit. Find whatever the nearest summit is. Find a transformation day. You're finding one right now, but there might be a physical one. And also invite speakers from the outside and have them present to your organization. You want to have a repository of information that's easily accessible, so a wiki lends itself to that. Have a bookshelf with interesting books that people can check out. Just make it really easy for people to learn. People want to learn, and if you make it easy, they will, and you can turn that into yet another superpower for your organization. So organizing, how do you organize around all of this stuff? And traditionally, we organize around projects, right? So we have a budget, we have a timeline, we have deliverables, and we're supposed to meet all the deliverables on the timeline and within budget. And we all know what happens. It never happens. Project-centric product development has challenges. And what we see more and more is a shift to a product-centric mindset, which aligns, by the way, with the two-pizza team mindset as well. And here the idea is that you're organizing around a product. It's a continuous effort. There's no really end date. You're continuously working on the improvement of this product for your customers. And you measure yourself against outputs and outcomes, not against hitting a date or delivering a particular feature. This is really about the totality. When you're product focused, your team can optimize their efforts for that product, eliminate the things that are unnecessary, and stay laser focused on what is necessary. And then there's a third way. So Mark Schwartz, my colleague who used to be the CIO of the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Department, he talks about having a business objective approach, where you pick a strategic KPI, a goal, something you want to do, and you optimize around that KPI. And that could include ways to optimize the KPI. It could include the software solutions you're working on, the products you're working on, the methods and the approaches and the processes and the procedures you're working on, and you eliminate, again, all the things that don't have anything to do with this KPI, and you're laser focused on that particular thing. But in common, it's measured by outcomes. It's a different way of thinking about how you deliver products and features. So I would de-emphasize the traditional approach around organizing around projects and focus more on products or business objectives. The biggest challenge I had other than culture was finding talent. And unfortunately, that hasn't really changed in the last 2 or 3 years. There is a great demand for talent, and talent is in short supply. So I spent months and months trying to recruit people that had done cloud work before, who really were competent and skilled and had demonstrated that. And they just didn't exist. And it's still hard to find people who've done cloud transformation work before. So what really the best approach is to leverage the people you already have. You hired them because they're smart. You hired them because they're competent and they're skilled. So help them make the leap. Invest in training. Get them moving in the right direction. And think about your career maps, right? So when you approach cloud, things will change. Instead of having a focus on relational database, for example, you might now shift to non-relational databases. It changes how those jobs are structured, and it changes how you progress in your career. So you really have to think through, what does that look like? So create a career map for all the jobs that you have in IT and how they relate to the cloud. I touched on communication a couple of times, but it's really, really important. We see companies that are successful in the cloud transformation embrace an idea around transparency. This comes out of the agile mindset, but the idea is you want to expose the data. You want to run your organization with metrics. And if the metrics are public, there's nowhere to hide. And it forces you to be really honest with yourself, and it forces your team to be really honest with itself when you're just driving against metrics that are publicly visible. This is not about shaming or about looking for the guilty party. This is really about being laser focused on what matters. And with this data, you can then use that data to dispel the myths that you can convince you can convince the naysayers. Look, here is the data. This is not an opinion. This is based in fact, and I have data to prove it and to demonstrate it. Be careful around the narratives that are in the organization. So we all know that a lot of decisions and ideas are made at the water cooler or in the kitchen. And so when people start to talk about failure as an example, something failed, something didn't work, and they use that as evidence that the whole project is doomed or cloud is wrong, you have to pay attention to that. And not come in with a hammer, but come in with data and with evidence and say, I hear what you're saying, I see that you're concerned, but really this is the truth and this is what's happening. Let me show you, right? So it's about managing the narrative in the organization and making sure that you don't have myths that go out of control, because they can actually poison the well. You have to avoid that. And one way to do that, again, is to constantly focus on education. Also important, you want to have debates and discussions. We should foster that. I had a rule that said, for the architects, I had a rule that said, if you argue over a particular architectural pattern or a particular solution, that's great. I'll let you do that for a day or two. And then if you can't come to a decision, I'll interfere and I'll intervene. But all too often, after we allow people to have a debate, everyone's been heard, you actually come out at a really good place, a better place than you would have had if you just decided up front that this is the way forward. So it's important to have these decisions and these debates. Once you make a decision, however, you've made the decision and you should go forward. And unless you have compelling evidence and data to go in a different direction, don't revisit the decisions you've already made unless you have to. And finally, it is important to have a culture of curiosity, because that's how you get people who want to learn. That's how you educate the organization. So make yourselves and your team available to answer questions, to demonstrate the organization what's happening, and invite participation. Allow people to come in, show them what's going on. Maybe put them on a keyboard and walk them through a deployment process. That could be really fun. All right, so you've built your first project, you've built your first couple of teams, or your first team, and now you want to scale out in the organization. And again, because you're training the people you already have, how do you then scale out these teams, right? And so one method that has worked really well, I did it, and many of my colleagues have done it, many of our customers have done it this way, is you introduce new team members, you bring them in from the organization and add them to an existing team for a sprint or two. And in that sprint or two, the team will train and educate the newcomer or newcomers. We have a debate about what the right number is. I only added 1 or 2 at a time, and my colleague Jonathan added 4 at a time. The important piece is to add people in every sprint or every other sprint. And as they learn, as they become part of the team, the team will grow, of course. And at some point, you go from a 2-pizza team to a 4-pizza team. And when you reach the 4-pizza team size, you split it. You create 2 teams out of the original team. That's why I call this team mitosis, right? Cell division. And you can grow the organization, you can accelerate this growth and throttle it by depending on how many people you add in each sprint or every other sprint. This is a very effective way to grow out and scale out the organization. Again, when you're going through this process, don't go alone. So it's tempting to just drive forward and kind of ignore the rest of the organization, just push forward. It's actually much more effective to figure out who are all the other players in the organization, what does legal need, what does the finance team need, and really understand what's motivating their future and their understanding of the corporate vision and how they want to accomplish that corporate vision. And look for opportunities where maybe you can automate something for them, right? So we had a compliance workload that was being done manually, And I figured out a way, I didn't figure out, my team figured out a way to automate that process and freeing up time for that compliance team, right? So you can solve their problems and then gain allies and help them accomplish what they need to accomplish, and they'll do the same for you. So build out these alliances, look for opportunities to work together across different functions in the organization and understand what's motivating them and how can you align with them to move them forward. Another way to scale through the organization, maybe across business units or business divisions, is to coach other teams. So we invited our sister organization in the UK to leverage what we had done. We trained some of their team members. We gave them access to our GitHub repository. They actually took the CloudFormation templates that we had built and basically forked the infrastructure. I love saying that, forking the infrastructure. It was awesome, right? So you can leverage and help each other. And one side effect that we see occasionally is that teams that are coaching each other wind up helping each other. They might have a different pattern. They might have something that they already built that they can share with you to help you go faster. You could actually create a culture of internal open source community where you might do a pull request and help solve a problem for your colleagues because you need to solve something in the infrastructure that they don't have time to do. And you wind up helping each other and becoming stronger along the way. So after you've done this for a while and you get really good at the foundation process and the basics of cloud architecture and building cloud native applications, you can level up. You can go to the next level up and say, okay, we're going to follow the chaos engineering philosophy of Netflix. So if you're not familiar with chaos engineering, this is the idea that you deliberately introduce faults into the system. Maybe introduce latency, or maybe you disrupt the service entirely to see what happens. And so in chaos engineering, the idea is that you are building applications in a way that they can survive or gracefully degrade without taking down the whole system. So if you think in the old days on a website, you might have a 5-star preference for something, or movies, let's say. You really like a particular movie, so you give it 4 or 5 stars. That little widget used to be tightly integrated, and if that widget failed, the whole website went down. That's not really good. So if you can use chaos engineering to introduce failures and to build bulkheads and circuit breakers into the system, you can make the overall architecture much more resilient. And on the security side, having a team of security experts who are constantly, in a way, attacking your system, so red teaming it constantly, helps you find vulnerabilities that otherwise you might miss. This is definitely an advanced approach, probably something you want to get help with, maybe with a partner, to learn how to do this well. But if you pursue this, you will build super resilient systems that can survive things that most organizations would not survive. And you can leverage new architectures, right? So if you have, like we had databases all over the place. We had dark data, this is just flat files and PDF files and video and things all over the organization that we could not leverage. So why not take the opportunity to find all those data sources, to liberate all that data that's hidden in your clickstream, in your mobile applications, in your log files, in your customer interactions, in your IoT streams of data, and bring all that data in to a place where it can be consumed. So build a data lake. Obviously, this is not simple. I'm not trying to trivialize this, but you have an opportunity to get access to all the data in the organization and then make that data available to a variety of teams, right? You could have your data scientists who really, really drill into what this all means and build out machine learning algorithms to find the nuggets. But you could also have this data exposed to business analysts, right, and give them a way to understand how the business is performing and give them a direct view into what's going on. So leverage these architectures because these new patterns actually give you an amazing amount of power to drive the organization, to drive the success of your business in ways that you probably couldn't imagine before. So in closing, I had a slogan, and I stole it shamelessly from somewhere, called think big, start small, and go fast. Have the courage to change. This is hard, right? So don't be afraid to try new things. Failure is okay as long as you learn from it. I speak some languages, and those of you who speak multiple languages, you cannot learn a language without messing up, right? And knowing that the people around you will be kind and they will tell you, this is how you messed up, this is how you actually say it. Figure out how to do those kinds of things. Build cultures around, create the culture you want. Create a learning culture, an education culture. Seek help from your partners and your allies. Challenge the assumptions, right? So you have bureaucracies, you have rules, you have procedures in place based on decisions that were made a long time ago. Those decisions at the time were the right ones, most likely, but are they still the right ones? So ask yourselves constantly, is this the right thing to do? Is this still valid? And experiment, try things. Just go out there and try it. In the cloud, the risk is really, you can mitigate risk really easily because your blast radius is smaller, your time horizons are faster, you can try things, you can learn, you can fail. And if you get it wrong, you try again. And if you're building a microservices architecture, which I recommend, you get the bonus of if the microservice doesn't do what you want it to do, don't fix it, throw it away and build a new one. It's much faster. Right? So in the cloud scale, you can go really fast and try things and experiment and get it in front of customers or in a subset of customers and learn directly from them what matters to them and what helps drive your business. So next steps for you, build something. If you haven't tried, sign up on AWS and build something. There's lots of tutorials. There's lots of really good material out there. Our technical evangelists have a Twitch channel. Find that and look at it. Look at our enterprise strategy blog, which I'm a member of the enterprise strategy team. There's really good content here, focused primarily at the executive and leadership level, but it's really good stuff. So take a look at our strategy blog. Go to an AWSome day. Go to any one of our events. Definitely go to reInvent. If you can, take your leadership team to an executive briefing center tour and learn something specific to your business from us, and share what your learners with us as well. And take training, seek out the training, and ask for help. And ask us, reach out to us. We want to help you. Our business succeeds when you succeed. Our services are built around what you need. So tell us what you need, and we'll help you get there. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a really, really good day. Take care. Farewell.